So here we are to discuss what to expect in 2023. Can the planetary cycles tell us anything about future trends? And I thought this was a good opening slide about ideas, because we're moving into some air modalities. You know, astrology has four modalities: fire, earth, air, and water. And we're all combination of all of those signs. And one of the preeminent changes this year will be one planet's going to move into water, one planet's going to move into air, but the air modalities become important, and that has to do with ideas. If you think about air, it's communication, it's relationship, it's ideas, new ideas. So that's one of the themes for the year, new ideas. So light bulbs have long been synonymous with ideas. A light, oh, something goes off in your head. So, and you get an idea, you get a connection, you run into somebody, they spark something in you. You meet, you get a parking space in front of where you want to go. That's your intuitive self guiding you. There's nothing from the GPS or anything. So a light bulb goes, oh, I better go talk to that person. So we're looking for this year to be those individual light bulbs going off inside you. So it is the year of the rabbit, most auspicious for people born in those years, because they would be the rabbit years. But new ideas, new perspectives, new understandings, new lines of communication, new technologies, new healing modalities, new freedoms, new questions, new answers. You can pretty much do the whole broad scope of what this would entail in terms of new ideas, these broad spectrum. So I like to begin with this understanding of what we're doing here, so you have a sense of what we're doing. This is not the way the solar system looks. The only thing that's accurate is the ordering of the signs, the zodiacal belt, is the backdrop where all the planets are orbiting around the sun, each in their own orbit. Here's Earth, the moon around Earth, you have Mercury on the inside, and Venus on the inside of Earth, and you get Mars on the outside, etc. So when we say Pluto in Capricorn, this is what we're kind of talking about, that Pluto, even you can't see Pluto, it's so far out, we don't even know exactly when it's doing what it's doing. But when it goes into Capricorn, it's apparently in front of the zodiacal sign Capricorn. And same with Neptune. Neptune is now in Pisces, and it stays quite a long time in Pisces. Pluto stays in one sign, also a long time, depends how long, but it does. And we know the Earth takes a year to revolve around the Sun. Here's Jupiter, etc. So when we say in this particular moment in time, which happens to be then, which is not now, but Jupiter would have been in Gemini because Jupiter, and that's what we're saying here. But we're also remembering that each moment in time is unique. And that's very important, that nothing repeats itself exactly. And also the time is circular. It's an important understanding for in our lives, because that circularity depends on you have a moment in time when you were born, and the planets are in a certain position. But then 12 years later, Jupiter is going to return to that natal position it was when you were born. Mars, 2.5 years after, every 2.5 years is going to return to that position. So when planets return to the natal positions where they were in your individual chart, in a country's chart, in a marriage's chart, in a job's chart, because this is all just a moment in time, then something sparks up, something awakens, an idea pops up. Oh, I better be doing this because this is my dharma. Because each of us have chosen the moment that we're born, according to Plato and the Greeks, and it's the way I understood it to be. So therefore, we all have the same things happen to us, but not in that same sequence. And that's what's unique for you, because the planets are orbiting around the sun, they're going at different speeds, they change, obviously they change signs, they change, sometimes it looks as though they're going backwards. Not really, but they're doing different, they're doing a dance. So, and we as astrologers look to those movements of the planetary cycles and look and see what's happening on Earth at the same time. It's the way we understand what's going on Earth. The ancients have been doing this for thousands and thousands of years. This is another understanding of it. Earth revolving around the sun. Obviously, there's no Mercury and Venus, or all the other planets are not here. But this is the zodiacal belt. In the previous slide, we had, the English Capricorn and all that above. This is the zodiacal signs that are actually what we see in the sky. And this is the eclipse. This is the celestial equator. It's the middle of the zodiacal belt, and this is the ecliptic. This gives us, because the Earth is tilted. The sun is higher. This gives us our seasons: winter, lower sun, higher sun. So if we could look back to 2022, I just read that Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the word for 2022 was gaslighting, and how they get that is that they somehow know what people have been looking up, and this is the word that becomes the most important word for the year. And it can be the act or practice of grossly misleading someone, especially for one's own advantage. So here, 2022 saw a 400% increase in lookups for gaslighting. So gaslighting can mean being deception or gross lying, but it can also mean, as originally understood from the play and the film of 1944, with Ingrid Bergman and Charles Boyer. I don't know if they were on the Broadway at the same time, or they were the same as they were in the film. But Boyer plays a husband who's tricking his wife into believing that her mental competence is in doubt. And he did this by flickering the gas lights in their apartment. And he would flicker the lights and he would say, oh no, they're not going off. So hence the term gaslighting comes to mean, down into our time, is that you are maybe lying or being deceptive, but also you are somehow misleading your partner, your victim, into some kind of feeling that they're going crazy. So I thought this was an interesting point of reference in terms of what 2022 was about. Maybe you can agree, maybe you disagree. So I'm going to move now into some specifics on the months, and I did it this way because invariably each of you is born in one month of the year. So I'm giving you a certain dates of the year when things might be happening. So as the year begins, we have both now in the sky now, and there's a great meet if we can see tonight between the 1st and the 5th, close to the North Star. There are a lot of meteor showers now. But Mercury and Mars are both retrograde, meaning they're changing their orientation to the sun. And when Mars has been retrograde, it's been in Gemini since end of August. So for you Geminis out there, or people with Gemini rising, you have been in more or less a forward, backward, and then forward movement, because Mars will turn direct on the 12th of January. You've been in a long period of time, and Gemini is about communications, writings, paperwork, ideas, traveling, moving around a lot. You can get on your bike if you're a Gemini and kind of roam around, and there's a lot of activity and moving. But when it goes retrograde, oftentimes that it can signify a time when because it's retrograde, it's going backwards, because you've got to go back over something again. And you can go back over and maybe correct past actions, which began in March of 2021, when the Mars and the Sun were in conjunct. So the conjunctions come together, and then the two planets, and then that starts a cycle, and then when they come together again, it'll be another place in the zodiac, and then another cycle begins. But in any event, hopefully over since this whole fall time period, and you all have Gemini someplace in your life. So whether it's relationships or your job or your money or your traveling or everything, there's certain delays, frustrations, having to do things over again. And Mercury is also retrograde now, has been since last week in December, which is a normal process for Mercury. He's supposed to slow down, and there again, you're going back over something again, redoing something. And this would have been in Capricorn, Mercury's in Capricorn. There's a full moon on the 6th, that's Friday. Full moons always bring things to a head. I mention this because if you happen to be born at one of these dates that I'm talking about, you might have a clue about what the year is going to be. If you were born on the 6th, for instance, there'll be a full moon year. That means you're on your birthday, you have a full moon. That means there's something going to come to a head this year for you in 2023 on your birthday. So in that same as the Mars going direct on the 12th at 8 Gemini. That would be that when a planet is making the station, that means it's moving from forward to direct or vice versa, it's very powerful. And 8 Gemini is a significant placement in the, if it is significant placement in your chart, you'll definitely be aware of it. It's also on the United States' Uranus, which will be interesting. There might be some kind of fervor, some kind of agitation and excitement around that time, which is 12th of January. As I say, Mercury goes direct on the 18th and in Capricorn, and because Mercury has gone into the underworld, when it goes retrograde, it gets new information. There can be high intuition available to you because you've taken information from another place. And remember, Mercury is the only god who could, in the Greek mythology, who could leave Olympus, go into Hades, pick up new information, and return to Hades, return to Olympus. Nobody else could do that. He had an invisible armor on. So, but it's significant. These myths are significant to our time. It helps us understand what the cycles in our life or patterns in our life are about. So this is, Mercury goes direct on the 18th. So all the planets move forward between January 22nd and April 21st. This is probably, if I say anything that sticks with you, that's going to be the thing that should stick with you the most. Is that from the 22nd of January to April 21st, all the planets are moving forward. That means all of your affairs in all of your houses won't have any making any backtracks. They're not going to be going retrograde, they're not going to be, which means that any kind of initiatives that you have, it's very important that you do that this time, right from January to April. Because once April begins, planets start going backwards, in their cycles, their orbits around the sun. It's no big deal. This is a long period of time for that to happen. Sometimes it never happens in a year. Sometimes it happens for a couple of days. So it's significant that this year, that we have that long time period. On the 22nd, which is why we make the note of that January 22nd, Uranus in Taurus, this is is now turning direct, which is a big deal. Uranus is the reformer, it's the agitator, it's the lightning bolt. Things happen. So, in Taurus, it's really about our values, ethics, and morals that we live by. And when Uranus is there, Taurus is a very stable earth sign. Money, values, land, property. And Uranus is there for 7 years, and Uranus has been in Taurus, but now this is the very, very center of the Taurus sign. The most stuck place is the middle of the fixed degrees. And when you have Uranus there, this lightning bolt wants to put that, come on, get unstuck from this, move from this position. If you have upsets in your life or don't take clues easily, it's because you get prodded along the way. Oh, I should be doing this. Oh, I should be doing this. And if you don't, then you get some kind of bigger event. Oh, I have to do it now. So this is when we use astrology, we use those times, that are given to us in the ephemeris. You can look up, when this is. Okay, well, I know that around the 22nd, there's going to be, Uranus is making a direct station, and I'm going to have to really, if I'm not happy with the way I'm living, with the values I'm living by, I have to do something about it. And astrologer George Stathis says that people will be standing on their soapboxes proclaiming their truth. Oh, this is what this is important. But the astrologer, that's what she says. And in terms of the morality, I thought this was very interesting. How does a country pass an $800 billion military budget, but not able to pass a $15 an hour minimum wage? Now, in 2015, the military budget was $500 billion. So now it's gone to 800, and we're not even in a war. So these are the kinds of things that you look for in the newspapers, and you look in you know, it doesn't, not to say we don't need a defense budget, but it is to say that's interesting, and why is that? And that's what this year is all about, these questionings. We're having new ideas, we're asking new ideas. We have a new moon on the 21st at 2 Aquarius. I'll try not to spend so much time on these others. Anyway, Venus, in February, I'm sorry this is not coming out the way it looks on my screen, but all the planets are moving forward, and this is the full moon on the 6th. This is called the snow moon. On the 10th, should we expect some kind of startling news, because Mercury, which has just gone direct in Capricorn meets Pluto, and because Mercury has gone underground, something has gone underground, and the new information is coming out. So that's something to watch for. This is February, and Mercury changes signs into Aquarius on the 12th. If you're a Mercury-ruled person, if you've got Gemini, Virgo rising, then it behooves you to know when your planet changes signs. Mercury moves very fast. So Valentine's Day should be absolutely lovely as Venus and Neptune. The 20th is a new moon. And this is the orbit of Venus. This will come up again. I'll show this again. This is Venus's orbit around the sun. And these are her retrograde periods. This is the pattern that she actually makes in the sky. All of the planets make these kind of beautiful patterns. This is the exquisiteness of our universe that we live in, the absolute perfection of it. So when she's retrograde, see that's making a loop. That's what all the planets do. But she happens to make this 5-pointed star, which is symbol of Venus. So March is probably going to be there's a lot happening in March. So on March 7th, we have a full moon. Each month of the year, this year, starts with a full moon. Just happens to be that way. And this is the worm moon when the soil wakes up. So March 8th, Saturn goes into Pisces until February of 2026. Now, this is a big deal. Saturn has been in a Capricorn sign, Capricorn and Aquarius, for 5 years. Saturn, the reality, the planet that organizes your life. It makes bones in your teeth. It makes structure in your body. It develops your life. It gives you discipline and responsibility. And for the past 5 years, first of all in Capricorn, and then in Aquarius, it's been a very difficult, hard, contracting signs. Okay. It just speaks to what we've all gone through the past 5 years. Now, when Saturn moves into Pisces in March 8th, it's not going to go back into Aquarius. It's going to stay in Pisces until February 2026. Now, if you were born either 93 to 96, or 64 to 67, or 35 to 38, you have Saturn in Pisces. And then because that's the orb of 30 years that comes around. Now, this was cute from the internet. Saturn in Pisces often looks down on their issues as unimportant in the grand scheme of things. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac. So, when Saturn is there, there's a discipline, there's a responsibility on many different levels, because you could have a whole talk on just Saturn in Pisces, what it will mean. But Saturn wants to create your discipline into the spiritual or metaphysical world. We have risen above thoughts, that's air, and gone to water. So we're into this is one of these changes. I know we have air also, but one of these changes is Saturn it's leaving an air sign and going into a water sign. So Saturn joins Neptune already in Pisces, increasing our intuition and demanding a routine that strengthens our trust in our inner voice. And that's going to be one of the issues for the year, is that Saturn demands discipline, and Neptune wants to dissolve boundaries. Pisces wants to dissolve boundaries. If you know any Pisces, they're musicians, they're poets, they really don't have very good handle on the accounting in their lives. And the taxes and all that. They have a broader point of view. So when Neptune is already in Pisces, Saturn, and when these two conjoin in Aries in a couple of years, that will be a big event. But they're not. Saturn just entered Pisces. Is entering Pisces in March. Astrologer Jessica Adams says previous Saturn in Pisces times brought religious reforms, prosecutions, or stresses, because Pisces rules religion. It rules how you're connecting to the divine, how you're doing that. So Saturn wants you to discipline that, whether that means more time at your piano lessons, or whether that means more time in meditation, or this communication with the divine, with the spiritual world, is going to have to be defined for all of us. So in February 35 to 38, we had the problems with the Jews, and then March with the Catholic Church and the Pill and the Vatican Council, and May 93 and 96 with the Church of England for ordained women priests. Those are things that she brings out that are the problems that have come in Saturn's and Pisces for religions. So March, we're not finished with March, because March 21st has the Sun and Moon moving into a new Moon in Aries, square Pluto, 0 degrees of Aries, on the spring equinox. We have the Sun and Moon together with Pluto. That's also an unusual. You can have the new Moon in Aries at any time in Aries, but it's unusual to have it on the spring equinox. So this is an initiation, because it's 0 degrees. Like Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, Aries is the first sign. So it's something starting. And it also squares Pluto. So on March 24th, Pluto, the planet of extremes, dips into Aquarius until June 12th, foreshadowing the next 20 years of Pluto in Aquarius beginning November 2024. Now, this is a transition. Pluto's leading one sign, which I showed you in the beginning, Pluto in Capricorn. It's moving into Aquarius. It's only going to get to 0 degrees of Aquarius before it dips back to Capricorn. This is a transitional process in terms of where the power is held. Pluto rules power. So in Capricorn, we've had it in Capricorn since 2008, and now it's dipping its toe into Aquarius. It's just going to foreshadow what will happen when Pluto really gets into Aquarius, November 2024. Pluto in Capricorn can handle change and are good at building something that will be advantageous. Capricorn likes to build a mountain, they build a bank account, they build a business, they build an institution. You all find Capricorns at the CEOs oftentimes of institutions, because they like to, they're good at commanding. But Pluto in Aquarius is always looking for hidden truths and subtle meanings behind everything in the universe. It's a whole different energy, which we'll talk about in more. So since 2008, we've seen an enormous rise in the authoritarian and capitalistic corporate wealth and power structures since then, when Pluto moved into Earth sign Capricorn. Because that's another element to think about that. The Capricorn's an Earth sign. You're building something physical. So Pluto rules extremes and can make small things big and big things small. Pluto rules deconstruction and transformation. When you have a Pluto transit in your personal life, your life completely changes. It does not go back to the way it was. This could be a death of your mother, or the death of your, God forbid, somebody else. Pluto rules those kinds of transformations, so something else can be reborn. It was discovered during the time of the atomic bomb. That kind of sense of destruction, then something else. You can say whether it's morally right or not. But anyway, astrologer Patrick Watson is a very good astrologer. Pluto is also associated with corruption, tyranny, absolute control, and absolute power, configured strongly in the inner charts of people who become movers and shakers in elite systems such as government, banking, and corporate boardrooms. Pluto rules commanding power. And I got this from the internet. It's an April 1st unofficial meeting, board of directors meeting of the Bank of International Settlements. This was April 1930 in Basel. And it's the oldest international financial institution. It plays a key role in the global economy. It now has 63 banks as members and 76 other non-governmental agencies. Now, when I think of, they are all, this including WHO, IMF, WE, World Economic Forum, all of these, they're operating under sovereign immunity. They do not have any authority over them. They are in control of, of whatever they are getting control of. So, and frankly, I just, on the Twitter, just as soon as I got here, I just had some little tweet that the World Economic Forum is going to decide that Kevin McCarthy is going to be the new Speaker of the House. And so this is one of the examples of what is going on in terms of unelected officials deciding things. And that's a theme that we're going to be, these next couple of years, we're going to be dealing with. So we can expect to hear from this group in June, because something's happening with the natal chart. And if you want to know more about this, the Tower of Basel, this is from the New York Times. It's a book review of Adam Labor's history of the Bank of Settlements. And it's actually quite interesting, because it's almost like he's saying in his book review is that it's like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, if you remember that play, and they're waiting for their Tom Stoppard play. It places two minor characters in Hamlet at the forefront, while the drama's major events are unfolding incomprehensibly in the background. So this bank, for central banks, it's the bank above all the other banks, is the most important bank in the world, an institution with virtually no accountability, and yet for decades it stood at the center of global network of money, power, and global and covert global influence. So this is a lesson, and we're going to be dealing with this immorality of finance. We have to, it's just an idea, okay? You take it with you. This is an idea. What's going on? What's important to actually know for everybody? That there needs to be a greater accountability in international capital flows, a lesson that surely resonates in the era when Wall Street executives avoided culpability for their role in the subprime. Remember that in 2008, when all of those millions of people lost their homes, but not one banker, not one institution fell. And they were too big to fail. And we all took it, swallowed it. And, the repercussions of that decision in 2008, when Pluto entered Capricorn, are still going strong. We're still having repercussions from that. So Pluto in Aquarius is moving to an air sign. It's leaving an earth sign. It's not about amassing that. Now, not to say it's going to happen this 2023. This is the transition that we're making, that we're all helping to make. Because the last time was the 1778, was the ratification of the U.S. Constitution. And the French Revolution also occurred then. During that time period, that the Copernican Revolution occurred when Pluto was in Aquarius. These were all times when the world was turned upside down, to use the phrase from Hamilton. That whatever was happening, this particularly the Copernicus, you have no idea what culture was like without a king. That was just an incomprehensible position. So the French really took power, masses of the people to the extreme. It was unfortunate, but astrologer Patrick Watson says to expect to see more transformational, nonconformist, abstract theorists and anti-heroes. Because this is the symbol, this is a clipping from the paper then. When the ninth state had ratified the Constitution, it became the Constitution. That's what this is about in the June 22nd, 1778. This was Pluto in Aquarius. This is the Copernican Revolution. The sun, this is just a wonderful pictograph or print or whatever it was, the sun being the center. Because before, remember, the earth was the center. Everybody was thinking. Now, I can go into this deeply, but maybe we won't if you're interested. Look into it. But astrologer George Astathis really talks about the transitions of Pluto into a different sign have historically been associated with financial crises, one after the other. You can think about the 1777, because the continent, there was no money in the United States, the colonies, the United States. Everybody had their own money. They were, they didn't use money. It was, they had to barter to get things done. And then you can look at this on your own time, but it is very interesting, particularly now because it was January 2008 when Pluto went into Capricorn and the Lehman Brothers problems begin to surface. And that's, I'm making that note because that's the parallel to the time period that we're in now, because Pluto is just going into zero Aquarius. Just like here, Pluto was just going into zero Capricorn. But there was something happening and that's why all your idea, you're keeping aware of what's going on these next couple of months from March to June, when Pluto tiptoes into Aquarius, because it's a forerunner of what's going to happen in 20 years. America's Pluto is at 27 degrees of Capricorn, and we're having a Pluto return. Just like I said in the beginning, a planet returns to the natal position it was when you were born. Now, you will never have this. I mean, maybe you will, but I kind of doubt it. 250 years, countries have. Roman Empire, English, British Empire, they have it. So Pluto brings, but the United States is having it this year, through this year, through October, into the time until Pluto really goes into Aquarius in November of 2024. So choices will have to be made for you personally, because Pluto, when it leaves a sign, it goes into a different department of your life. And you will see that right away. Pluto brings change, for better or worse. The change will take many forms. I don't want to say, but this I think is so interesting because Washington was crossing the Delaware December 26th. The colonists had been, I like American history. They had been gotten out of Long Island, they'd been defeated, they'd been run out of Brooklyn, they were run out of Manhattan, they were run out of Fort Lee, they were run out of the harbor, the Heights up there, Washington Heights, they were run out of all New Jersey, they had to run over to Pennsylvania to flee the British. So in Christmas, and this was a horrible Christmas, this is cold Christmas, Pluto was where it is now, at the 27 degrees of Capricorn. Now we don't even, in 1776, we don't even have the Constitution, we have the Declaration of Independence, but Pluto would be entering Aquarius in April of 1770. But how would you ever have thought that a ragtag colonial army could defeat the greatest fighting force in the world, the British Empire, the fight with Brits? Astrologer Sean Megard, this is a wonderful, and I have the copy of this Astrologer. If you're interested in astrology, you really should, take a subscription to this magazine. In fact, my sister's in the audience, and she's an editor in this magazine. But it's very enlightening if you're interested in reading about astrology. He had a wonderful piece in this issue about that the focus moves from the old white men, and in this case it would have been the British, the king and the monarchy and all the parliament over there, to the outsiders. We would have been the outsiders. And also, when Marquis de Lafayette came over here, he came over totally on his own. He was a complete outsider. He learned English very quickly, and Washington treated him like a son. And then that relationship developed into the French coming over here and helping us win the American Revolution. Without the French, we could never have done it. And this is the outsider taking over control. This person from the fringes of society, and that's what we're going to be seeing in these next couple of years. The fringes of society taking over. His piece is the center will not hold, because the Capricorn systems, the institutions, those governments, all things that have been maintained for so long, are going to be fraying around the edges, because there's going to be the influence of the outsiders coming in, just like it was here. So Pluto and Aquarius represent some of the most profound times in history when the center, be it the personal, psychological, cultural, is unable to hold its place because of what's coming. I just think, because this is so akin to the time, look, it's even Christmas time. You think about what they went through, those guys. So in March again, we're still in March, Mars in Cancer. Finally, Mars leaves Gemini after being there since August, moving to a different sign, a different department of life in your house, in your own personal natal chart. Mars and Cancer are persistent and will try to mold the situation. It's a water sign. It's not like a Mars in Gemini, air sign, moving around, talking a lot of books, a lot of reading, a lot of communications. This is water. It's going to be more nesting, being at home, wanting to cook. Mars and Cancer is, be more domestic during this time. And it forms this nice aspect to Saturn in Pisces. So if you want to start something around that time, just around March 26th, that's a good time to do it. Remember, all the planets are going forward. This is from Renee Van Horn. Understanding where all the Mercury retrograde periods are this year, they're all in Earth. So it's important for all of us, especially if you're a Gemini or Virgo, but we all have it someplace, to know when these time periods are, because Mercury, when its planet is retrograde, it spends a long time in a sign. Not just, Mercury can go by in less than a month sometimes. But when it's retrograde, it stays a long time. So the stable, productive, practical, ambitious, grounded, responsible, dependable, sensual, materialistic, these are adjectives describing earth signs. All of the earth signs. You can see we had December, we're in this now, with Capricorn and Taurus and Virgo and Capricorn again at the end of the year. That will be one cycle. Next year, Mercury will retrograde in one of the other elements, fire, earth, air, and water. But the earth themes of practicality, grounding, working productively, foundational and structural developments, making a difference in the world. Does it grow corn? Is this practical? So our thinking should be along those lines too, making new ideas, make them more practical. April comes and we have eclipse time. There's a full moon, another full moon at the beginning of the year. There's a total eclipse, and a new moon in 29 Aries. This is going to be quite a dramatic eclipse because Pluto is close by. Eclipses change when in your personal life, when you have an eclipse on one of your personal planets, your life changes. You can look back on your whole trajectory of your life, and you will see that happened. It's the alignment of the sun and the moon and the earth. They're in their alignment. So there's the shadow of the sun, or the shadow of the Earth's light can't get to the moon, and vice versa, because we're in the way, or the shadow falls on our planet. But this eclipse hit the moon in Biden's inauguration chart. So we're going to hear some news about from the White House, and the Federal Reserve chart, also at the end of April. This is the April 20th eclipse. And Mercury is stationed retrograde at 15 degrees of Taurus, conjunct Uranus. Here comes this disruptor again. The mental, these are when the illumination should go off. You have a lightning bolt when Uranus and Mercury leave. This is the path of it. This is the totality. We're on the Earth, that you're going to be able to see it. This one we're not going to be able to see. But this is interesting historical data from that time period, April 18th, historically what's happened in this country. It's very sobering that there seems to be a period of time that, because we're having the eclipse at this time too, if you want to look at all of the things that have happened during that April 18th to 21 time period, which will include this eclipse this year. So I venture to say there'll be something to add to that list. I don't know what it is, and I'm not, no idea, but something that's going to move us along spiritually. It's no big deal. We've been through all of this, what we're doing now. It's not a big deal. There's nothing to be afraid of. May 23rd is a full moon lunar eclipse. Now this one we will see, because the shadow forms in the United States. So, and this is the full moon in Mercury and Uranus with the sun. This is a rough time. Uranus is the lightning bolt. It's the revolutionary. I want to be free from something. And so when you have Mercury together with it, there's this lightning bolt going off. Oh, let me have a new idea. This is one of the, and in Taurus, this would be, because it's in Taurus, it'd be Earth, it'd be practical, benefiting you. Jupiter enters Taurus on the 17th for years. If any Taurus is in the audience? Good. Well, you have a year where Jupiter's in your sign. We all get 1 year when Jupiter's in our sign. Jupiter's in Aries now. It's just a very short stay because he was in Aries a little bit last year. But this is 12 year. Jupiter rules expansion, it rules success, it rules on getting bigger. In Taurus is my material well-being, it's my values, it's the things I own, it's the beauty that I create in my garden. We create more beauty when we expand there. So the new moon is the 19th. I have a picture of Jupiter in Taurus here. This is, all these guys. Jupiter rules kings. It rules the truth, okay? And here are all the kings sitting around the table eating, Jupiter in Taurus. If you read into this, look and feel what this picture gives you, you'll get a sense of what Jupiter in Taurus is like. Because this is not always, although I'm speaking on an intellectual level, it's not always what it evokes. I'm trying to put pictures there that, in some situations, that evoke some feeling. This is a well-being, and everybody's got a crown on their head, and they're eating together. And this is Jupiter in Taurus. Let's get bigger. Let's have more sensual pleasures. June 23rd, June 2023 begins again with the full moon on the 4th. If your birthday's around June 4th, we'll be at a full moon. We have Mercury meeting Uranus another last time. This spring is full of Mercury with Uranus. And because Uranus is at a very sensitive point, it's an Aries point, it's going to be noticed what's going to be happening. There's a new creative idea. And Pluto goes back into Capricorn to finish out there. Pluto leaves Aquarius, goes back into Capricorn. We still haven't dealt with all the karma from the Capricorn, from the corporate, what's been building up in corporate wealth and power structures. Because Pluto digs things out. It goes underneath and it uncovers things. So we're still in this time period when that's going to occur until January 22nd, 2024, when it goes back into Aquarius again for a couple of months, and then this is a transition. That's one of the themes for this year. We're in a transition. Mercury in Gemini, powerful Mercury there in Gemini, loves to be in Gemini. And Saturn also stations retrograde. When a planet stationing here, Pluto was in the Capricorn, the stations are very important, makes planets very strong. If you're any Pisces here? Anybody Pisces? Pisces, yes, I see Pisces, 2 Pisces, I know, here. So anyway, Saturn's entering your sign, and particularly the first 7 degrees, which would be about, end of February, from the beginning of 19th to the 27th of February, something like that. Saturn's on your sign, and Saturn will stay in Pisces for 2.5 years, depending on if you're born in the February part or the March part. But Saturn puts a responsibility. I've got to take responsibility for my expansive viewpoint that Pisces has, for my spirituality, for my connection with the divine. You're going to have a sense that I have to get more responsible for it. You can also have a sense that I'm exhausted, because Saturn will contract. It'll make you more serious. It'll make you more responsible. There's a new moon in Gemini on the 18th, and this is an interesting time if you're going to start. You always start things at new moons, just after new moons. Don't bother starting them. Between new to full. Other times a little more precarious. So we have another full moon in July. This is Happy Birthday America. And this is July 3rd, a full moon. So America has a full moon on her birthday. Okay? So what I said, if you have a birthday on a full moon, it's going to be a momentous year. You're going to remember the year. And in astrology, we go from your birthday to your birthday. We don't go from January to January. It's your year. So the new moon is the 17th, 25th, goes to Pluto, squaring the nodal axis. And this is the next slide is about that. So something is going to be revealed about our existing power structures around this time, around the new moon on the 17th. And this is when the nodes move into the new signs. We've had the nodes, I'm not going to go there. Nodes move, okay. The Chiron return. The United States is going through a really difficult times, actually. And in case we all do know that or have read about it or something, but we are, we have been having Neptune opposition all in 2021. Neptune is the planet of, I cannot figure out what's going on. And because our Neptune is square Mars, which is very much an indicator of missionary complexes or taking up actions that don't really have a clear objective. Neptune clouds everything, and we don't really know what we're doing. We've had experience in that. Pluto return is that last year and into next year. It really keeps on going into 2024. But this year is the Chiron return. Chiron is the wounded healer, and then we're going to have the Uranus return in those years. But this year it's really, even though it doesn't actually become exact until 2024, we're really suffering from it now. And because of the entire time that Chiron is, if you're 50 years old, everybody has, at 50, they have a Chiron return, which Chiron returns to the natal position it was when you were born. Chiron is the wounded healer. It's in mythology, it is he was abandoned by his father and his mother, and he has a psychic wound, birth wound, physical wound, a spiritual wound. Something is eating at his soul that he can't quite make some sense out of. And every 50 years, in the United States' chart, I'm talking about this in July because it's the United States' birthday, we've had these times when we were doing things that are painful in a certain aspect because we are trying to fix things in the past that have been broken. So we're at these crossroads, and you can see from all of these time periods in history, Reconstruction, and the ending of World War I, and the protests against the Vietnam War. And then now we have this increased activism by all groups, inflammation and increase of membership and activism by the Ku Klux Klan, numerous of these periods. So we're wounded. There's something in us we're going to heal. And so, but you can't heal unless you unless you actually name the wound, unless you deal with the wound. So this is, it's actually going to happen also in 2024, but the entire time Chiron is in Aries, we are experiencing it. And these periods of intense social activism, a demand for free speech, constitutional rights, challenges to outdated laws restricting the rights of individuals. This is partly what we are experiencing now as a collective. I'm not being heard. I'm wounded. You're not paying attention to me. All of it, the wounds, the healing comes. Now, the person who's having his direct is Elon Musk, and he's had it through from April 14th to 22. He's still in the third time of it. Because Chiron goes back and forth like the other planets. It goes and it hits it a couple of times, the exact position from when he was born. But the last of these will occur in February next month. But he's wounded. There's something wrong. Maybe he made a mistake spending $44 billion on this thing that's never going to make him enough money or whatever. But there's something going on here which is way beyond. And when you hit 50, and if you look back in your life, there will be a decision that you make at 50, which is what he is. Whether you're going to give back to society or whether you're going to nurture, you stay in your own wounded place. I'm going to lick my wounds, and I'm not going to heal my wounds. I'm not going to contribute to society. So there's a demarcation that everybody makes at 50, and he's going through that now. Now the interesting thing is because he's considered very much an outlier now because he's bought the business, he's uncovered all these old files. He's slowly, Twitter, I don't know if anybody here is on Twitter, but it's where you want the fast information. Maybe not all of you want it, but if you want fast information from the people that are making the news, that's what it doesn't cost anything, you just get on it. But he is releasing all of the files from the previous owners of Twitter and how they managed, and it's going to come out, the presidential election, how they silenced certain people, they activated them. They couldn't get on Twitter. Donald Trump was omitted from Twitter, and he was so it's this collusion between, and this is what's going to slowly come out of the government and the big tech companies suppressing the rights of individuals. So, because Aquarius is about the individuals, we are moving in this time when we have voices. We're very important. Individual, you have all your rights, and so all of this is going to come out slowly, releasing these files. Now, whether the mainstream media will cover it or not, whether they will, is debatable, because there is a certain corporate structure where they're kind of protecting one another. But this is partly what Pluto in Capricorn, in conjunct the natal Pluto of the United States, over the next couple of years is going to uncover. Because this is where we're wounded. We can't say we can't say that that governments were all created equal if we're not actually doing that. Oh no, you have your right of free speech, but not you. We're wounded there. It's not right. It's not fair. So this is Venus retrograde cycle, which begins. This is what Venus is going to eventually towards the. This is in Leo. I think it's it becomes an evening star. You're going to watch Venus in the sky now, and then you're going to watch her go towards the sun, and then in the fall she's an evening star, and then she's going to disappear and go underground and become a morning star. And so in your life, if you have a Leo, we all have Leo someplace, but you're strongly connected with Venus, this is the time. She goes retrograde less than any other planet, but it's about relationships, it's about your desires, it's about going into the underworld, like Venus goes from an evening star to a morning star, going and getting new information. What do I want? What do I desire? Do I want this relationship? How am I relating to this? Do I want this money? Do I change my move from one bank to another? Venus rules money and relationships. Power shifts often occur when Venus goes retrograde. So definitely not recommended to start a new relationship with Venus is retrograde unless you knew the person before, because Venus is going back. Oh, I'm going back to that old relationship. So that's one of you can keep that in your mind. But Venus and Mars do not actually meet. They don't form a conjunction until February 2024. So we're going to be on a different relationship cycle in February 2024. They get close to each other, Venus and Mars, because that's, you know, the friendship, intimate friendship, the passions, but they don't actually meet. August, normally. Anyway, full moon, beginning of August, new moon, the full moon begins August, new moon the 16th. And this is, again, this beautiful pattern of Venus going retrograde, because we're in this time period now, July, August, when Venus is making this beautiful five-pointed star. Another full moon here, full moon, the 1st of August, the 2 full moons in August, and the 31st. And this is the signs of reality check. From mid-July through October, the north node of the moon is squaring Pluto. And this is what one of these two, Pluto and the north node, were conjunct in November of 2010. And this is really the beginning of the amassing of the corporate power, when the Supreme Court made the decision on the Citizens United, when corporations became individuals and that there was no limit on how much money corporations could give to political figures. So there is not only a massing of government and non-governmental and corporate, but then now the Supreme Court is also, the judicial branch of the government is making a stay in the fact that we can get these corporations have more and more power. So this is certain times when these two planets, Pluto conjunct the North Node, then they're square the North Node, then they're opposite the North Node, and they're going to be square again in July for the last phase of the cycle. So this is Pluto connecting with the node of the moon. Pluto is the power, and this is where the power is. And the corporate, this is all about Capricorn. We had all this Patriot Act business and this International Space Station. NASA has allowed the International Space Station to have corporations can get up there and make for-profit things. They can do deals on the International Space Station. I mean, I don't know about you, but I think that's really kind of weird. So anyway, we're in this last bastion of this intense, corporate, powerful control of our lives. So in 2027, Pluto meets Aquarius. The power shifts from the corporations to the people. Aquarius is the people. September, anybody who's an Aquarius, Scorpio, Taurus, or Leo have been having a very difficult time these last couple of years, especially the past 2.5 years, because you've had Saturn in Aquarius, and you've had Uranus in Taurus, and Scorpio squaring all that. It makes it very difficult. You can't move. There's just a blockage. But the good thing is for these signs is that Jupiter is now in Taurus as of the 17th of May, and Venus is spending a long time in Leo. So there's some relief now for all these six signs that have been not able to move forward, or just very difficult to move forward because you have heavy planets. Full moon on the 29th, if you have a birthday on the 29th, you're in a full moon, things come to a head. This is October, another eclipse period. We're moving pretty quickly now. I'm sorry if you can leave if you need to leave, please. This is another eclipse season. A new moon on the 14th to 21 Libra, square Pluto. This is another dramatic eclipse. Should be dramatic, either huge obstacles suddenly disappear or crisis may suddenly appear that moves through quickly. So the new moon on the 14th, the lunar eclipse is here on the 28th. The new moon is here, that's the solar eclipse. The new beginning is on at 21 Libra. And then the full moon lunar eclipse. The Jupiter in Taurus is on there, and that brings an element of hope. New moon, full moon. There's a lunar eclipse. Eclipse seasons are always the most dramatic times of the year. We had one in April, May, and then also October. This is November. Scorpio time of year. Finally, Saturn is moving direct to 0 Pisces. Saturn is going to go back over the first 7 degrees of Pisces, go back, and then now it moves forward again, which is good. There'll be lessening of the intensity on those first 7 degrees of Pisces. Venus moves into Libra. It's very powerful then on the 9th of November. and there's a new moon in Scorpio. Expect to move quickly. Mars moves in Sagittarius, and the full moon there. I mean, I can only, you know, I mean, I don't know. But anyway, here's December. You know, I want to give you something individually, but it's difficult when you're trying to get through the whole year. So if you pick out your birthday on one of these slides, then you've got a real gem. Go for it. Try to remember it when it comes. So Mercury's changing sign, Venus in Scorpio, moon and Sag. Always look for new moons to begin things. And the full moons, you reach some kind of culmination. And the full moon on the 27th of December, career path, something in your career path will solidify. Now we're coming to the conclusions here.
What is that?
I love it.
Is it going down?
No, it's going up.
Well, no,
It's coming down on the left.
Yeah. So this is just the conclusions about, since January 2008, we've seen the matrix of corporate entities get bigger and uglier. Insurance companies, big pharma, big oil, gun makers, big food, big ag, defense contractors. Accumulation of power by corporations has risen steadily to reach a critical absurdity. How are unelected officials directing our lives? And that's an idea you know, it would be important to keep in mind when you are spending, you know, in your daily business. But Pluto shifts into Aquarius, giving you a power shift to the people. Now, as I say, it's just beginning this year. You're not going to see anything dramatic, but the inkling of what's going to happen is what you're going to be able to see. The ever-increasing labor protests, you said the feminine protests, the Iranian women, their Habib, you see this all over the world. I mean, even the worldwide marches to get the mandates, you know, there are lockdowns in China, and there's a fire in the Chinese building, 10 people died, and that was it. They had it. They started, the whole country, you can't have these lockdowns anymore. You know, they were under very severe lockdowns. So anyway, the first month, even they are in protesting. That's a big deal when you get to Chinese people. Something's going on. First months of Pluto Aquarius this year will have a peek into the future. But we had it before. You know, this is Eisenhower's farewell address in 1961. You know, I can read this whole thing, and maybe you can, but if you want to. But it talks about how to keep. We have to have some military establishment, but we must not fail to comprehend its grave implications. In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. We've heard that. He's credited with coining that term in 1961. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. He was our president for 8 years. And in his farewell address, this is an actual piece from what his notes. The prospect of domination of science through federal funding, and conversely, domination of science-based public policy by what he called the scientific technological elite. In 61, he was talking about. That's 80 years ago, isn't it? 40, 60 years ago. 70 years ago. Yeah, that's, you know, and he's talking about it then as being a serious problem. So this is something that wonderful astrologer Michael Luton, written in Vanity Fair. I'm coming to the end, there's just a couple more. That 2006. Pluto in Capricorn is going to change America from the inside out. Thereafter, threaten our very existence, challenge our economy, and divide the country politically, written in 2006. Pluto in Capricorn means the ascendance into overt power of corporations in relation to the government. Words of patriot and treason will lose their meaning, and in some cases they become interchangeable. Now, that didn't happen last year. What is treason to one person will be patriotism to another. Just as it was back in the 1760s and 70s, the country's mood will become darker and much more conservative. Happened. But the situation will change when Pluto enters Aquarius at the end of the 2020s. Now, we're seeing just the beginning of that. Then in the years 2023 to 5, the final stages of Pluto return and the Capricorn effect will reach a climax. This is a necessary and inevitable step in the evolution of this country that will result in a reworking of the Constitution in the last half of the 2020s. And we can actually hope for that, because that is, you know, that is something that, because the Constitution was ratified when Pluto was in Aquarius 250 years ago, when planets come around to the same position they were when you were born, something happens. Okay, we have a time for rebirth, renewal, And that's true in your personal life, and it's true in the company life. He was ahead of his time here. So what to expect in 2023? Ideas, new ideas. Cryptocurrency, you can tell me all this business. Well, should we accept CBDC, the central bank digital currencies? You don't give a credit card to Citibank or something. That's just that Citibank. Some of the Federal Reserve is looking into lots of countries in the world are looking into this central bank. That's like the Bank of International Settlements. That is a central bank. It governs all of the other banks and has absolutely no, has a total immunity. They're not. So this is what has been circulating. They wanted to have a discussion paper in the Federal Reserve. Biden has asked for a commission to look at it, whether we should participate in this central bank digital currency. That means you don't have priority over your own finances. In China, they have this now. They have that card that, on your phone. You can go certain places if you've got a good credit rating. You can't go other places if you don't. If you're and so we're looking at, this is one of the pitfalls of the Pluto in Aquarius. But we have to keep in mind, it doesn't have to happen. So how are we going to get these new ideas? Because this is kind of what Aquarius is about, the water carrier. The ideas, we're getting it from the wavelengths, from the telephone, from the vision. How are we getting them? As far as media goes, if you read the New York Times, then start reading the New York Post. And I would strongly recommend this because I know it sounds funny, but this is partly what we've been trained to be divisive. That my opinions are not, that you don't have the right opinions. And that's part of the maybe the modus operandi to make it that way. But if you're regular to CNN, then start watching Fox News. It doesn't have to be all the time, but know what the other side is thinking, because these are new ideas. And we all need, if we're going to be a collective together, we all need to have these, be at least open to the new ideas. And the other piece of this is, just like the star in the tarot is the symbol, she's water, she's carrying water. And how are we going to build up our inner voice, our consciousness, the inner knowing? When you're your intuition, when you walk into a room or walk into the right place, I was talking to you about in the beginning, that you know exactly what to do, that you're not outer directed, that you're inner directed, that you're making this connection with your soul and your heart, right? Instead of the wavelength or what the outside world is telling you. And this is one of the things that all of you have to be working on individually. So you're developing, it might be that you start meditating. It might be that that you take a course in altered states of consciousness. Because this is all part of Saturn and Pisces too. You're going to have to make a structure to altered states of consciousness. Like, they're doing lots of experiments with, PTSD and acid trips with veterans, and it's really helping the veterans let go of those old memories and get healed. And that's what it's all about, is the healing. But maybe in this time period, maybe making some rituals and prayers, praying more, getting with groups, like-minded groups of people, getting off the cell phone. This is, how we're all addicted to these phones, stopping with the phone so much. Because for now, we used to, ancient goddess of the moon in the Greeks' time, you intuited what you needed to do, what you're going to go. And this is the symbol here. But now we're getting a lot from computers. We're getting it from a tech company that's telling us what to think. And this is, really, we're at the end here. So the problem would be with Aquarius is that will our humanity get corrupted by technology? And that's the big issue here. It's an air sign, androgynous, doesn't care whether you're black, white, or, but we're really seeing technology really making advances. Quantum computers. There was a wonderful piece in the New Yorker, Google and Amazon, these very, very fast computers, robots placing units. The scientists made in December the experiment, the fusion experiment, more energy. They finally developed the fusion, which is what the sun does. It creates energy, but they finally got to the point that it created more energy than it needed to do it creating. And also whether we're going to have the big reset, that is that each of us has an electronic ID tied to your bank account. That's what, when you hear the term big reset, that's what they're talking about. So these are just ideas. I'm going to, kind of skip over that. So this is maybe where we are now. This is Melancholia, Albert Durer's picture of melancholia. We're kind of stuck in. How are we going to get to heaven? Here's the stairway to heaven. How are we going to get there? We're kind of stuck. It's a starving dog. We've got these implements around us. There's a magic square. This is a magic, everything which way adds up to 34. There's some magical. How are we going to build these forms? How are we going to get there? And melancholia is the sad position. But I'm telling you here, this is, I have showed this before, but we use an astrologer, Bravo, and this is he takes the distances between all the planets and graphs them together. And if you can see here, this is the entire century. And you can see here the ups and downs of this is the 2000 election, and then you have this. So we are down here. This is 2000 and right at the pinnacle, 21, 22. We are making this rise up. And that's what is so important to understand in terms of planetary activity, and that's what this talk is all about understanding, can they help us, can the planetary science help us? So in the entire century, we have just experienced the worst possible, commingling of planets in most depressing times. When everything was down, and when you're down like that, you think that's the way it's always going to be. And Barbeau he wrote this in 2011, the forecast for the year. This was written in 2011. It was published in June of 2020. This is from him. He passed away before his prediction could come true. It may well be that we are seriously threatened by a new pandemic, 2020 to 21, a period in which is the lowest point in the cyclical index in the whole of the 21st century. However, this configuration can also transfer its dissonant core to the field of geophysical disasters. And in last place, it wouldn't spare the world of international businesses because nature and society would be indiscriminately affected. Nature, society, everything's affected by the way the planets are intermingling with one another. He did a ratio, and that's what this is. So he predicted the pandemic and way ahead of his time, and that what I just showed you previously was his prediction for the for the rest of the century, that we've been through the worst of it. That's it.